Welcome. Hello. So nice to see you today. Uh, we're going to be talking a little bit about theology, and that word has a lot of different interpretations. But when we think of the North American context, there are a lot of factors that come into play when it comes to how we are going to approach missions work and evangelism. Um, we all know the most important aspect in evangelism is love. Part of that love is building relationships. And as a researcher and a professor, I really recognize how things that happen locally flavor how scripture is interpreted and how religious activity happens. Walls, the researcher that we're drawing from today, has a quote: "Theology arises out of situations that actually happen, not from broad general principles." So, what does that mean? It means we may have great ideas, we may have great theory, but when it comes to presenting the good news, the gospel, we need to be in tune with what's happening locally. We are not selling something, okay? Some people approach evangelism almost from a business model. This requires a much more fine tuning. We are not just planning something, we are communicating with people, we are building relationships. And some churches do very badly because too much emphasis on almost a business model. But if we want long-lasting connection, we need to build relationships. And part of that is looking at the local place, the local context. And in an earlier class, we were talking about individual culture, corporate culture, and as evangelists, as missionaries, as moksanim, or even in our offices, whatever our place may be, we have to look at the individual and the group culture and realize that there is a lens that all of these individuals and groups are looking through. And that lens is changing, just like a camera. You have a lens on a camera, and sometimes there are things that can be done with lenses, and we look at things closely, we step back, some things are blurred, some things can be colorful, we look at the background. So if you're a photographer and you may be taking a picture of your wife or your husband, and you're taking that picture, you may want that picture to be in a very nice setting. So there's the relationship between the person and the setting. Well, it's the same thing in intercultural studies. And we are looking at that person and the context that they find themselves in. And I was reading an issue of the Journal of Asian and Asian American Theology, and we should recognize there are so-called socio-cultural nuances of theology. And Young, who wrote in that journal, quoting, said there's an interconnectedness between ethnic identity and religious identity. And I think of the country of Korea, and I think of the fact that there is a history of respect for ancestors. And I think there is a perfect example of how God has created a situation where Jesus Christ and the Bible can be honored in that context, because there is in the history of Korea a respect for ancestry. Now, some people might say, ooh, we can't worship ancestors. Well, I don't mean that, but God can use that respect for ancestors, the past. And this can be used as a very important tool in evangelism. Now, when we come to certain contexts in America where maybe ancestry is not valued as much, certainly right now in America, people are looking at ancestry more, DNA testing, looking at the history of families. It's happening more, but the sense of individualism sometimes takes over, and that individualism happens in the church to a great deal. I have actually gone to church services where the Moksanim, the senior pastor, will be speaking, and he may say, it's about your relationship with God. It's just between you and God. You must put forward your commitment to God, that you are giving your life to Jesus Christ. So you might hear that kind of a sermon, and then they will say, oh, and it's not about your family. Well, yes, we should have a personal relationship, but I think sometimes Christianity, in contemporary Christian culture, sometimes in America, there is this total emphasis on individualism, and family is ignored and pushed out the door. And I think that is not what the Bible is saying. And I think also it is not, as intercultural educators, remember in an earlier class I said Jesus, meaning, God is an artist. God is creating. And part of that creation is finding God in everything. So if we are having a relationship with God and we're saying, my relationship is just with God, that's not representing the history of Christianity in the Judeo-Christian tradition. There is respect for history, respect for lineage, respect for family, respect for past, respect for the good experiences, the bad experiences, all of the learning. It is important to remember that. But if you minister in the United States and you come here as a missionary, or you are here as a missionary, you sometimes are dealing with this highly individualistic culture, which we have said several times, but it's really important to understand that context, because if you value family and you value family history, your Christian family history, for instance, or even your non-Christian family history, that can be a difficult thing. But if that means something to you, your family history, and whether that's religiously or ethnically or traditionally, God can use that here in America. If you can share that and give people a new perspective, a perspective that I feel America needs and is ready for, wow, that would be just great. And praise the Lord if you could bring that respect for ancestry here, teach people about it, tie it in with biblical lineage, biblical history, and remembering things. Because when we study Christianity, it's the big picture, the prophecy, Jesus Christ, the prophets of the Old Testament. It's all an historical thing. Of course, moved by spirit, moved by prayer, moved by, yes, even some laws. So we need to remember that. Now, in different settings, we see different styles of connection with people. And in a very dramatic example, when we think about times of war, many times when people were under oppression, uh, people turned to Christianity to get through that oppression. And when we think about an invading culture, like for instance in American history, not now, but in the late 1700s, the the culture of England was in essence, even though we were part of England, it was almost like an invading culture. When the British people came here to America, they took over. There was this invading culture. Well, when we study this theoretically, if there is an invading culture, we notice that there are three effective points for those who are victims of an invading culture. And that would be values, hierarchy of leadership, and the local point of leadership. So when I look at Korea as a country, Korea is a very strong country and very strong people. And it has a very honored history. It has just a great sense of sharing and being together. And leadership can be very important. So if someone says, who is a leader, you really need to do that, they may not even say you really need to do that. They may say, I do this, do that. So, and maybe very politely, but there is a less questioning. And some of that, I was talking to one of my students from Korea, and this is a long time ago, because I've taught students from Korea for many years, and when I was just starting to learn more about Korea, I asked the student, I said, why is there this very easy submission to authority? It seemed, from my American perspective. And the student explained to me that there had been a lot of aggression toward Korea. And if you didn't listen to the leader, you may lose your life, because there needed to be someone who could protect everyone. So this is kind of embedded in this history of Korea. So now here in America, not in every situation, we may see people that do want to question more. Now, when I say questioning is good. Some communication styles, we question, we ask questions, we discuss things. Do you think this is a good idea? Oh, I don't know. What about this? What about that? That's very good. That kind of discussion, that communication style, I like that style a lot. But sometimes there is a style when it comes to hierarchy here in America where the hierarchy is not very strong. So you can be kind of what might be considered lower in the group. But that person may go, well, why do I have to do this? Or what's going on? Or so it seems like, wow, there's no respect. So if you come here to minister, it might seem a little rude, a little strange. So, but it really, in fact, it's kind of part of this American culture. So if you see that, I think you should try to be understanding, try to know that this is the way some people operate, this is the way some people communicate. Sometimes they are rude, sometimes maybe it's just they want to feel like they have more power. It's important to talk about this, because in this class we're talking about ministry in the United States, in North America, generally speaking, and it's necessary to realize that. I think if we can look at different cultures and realize that by looking at other cultures, it's a way to understand meeting people, dealing with situations, and a way to really allow God to do the work. Because God made all the cultures, God made differences. So instead of us fearing it, God can use difference for really great, exciting things. We were just talking about Korea, and when I think about Nigeria, there was evangelism done, Christian evangelism done by the by missionaries, and in Nigeria there was a large group, or is a large group called the Igbo. The Igbo. Now this group, many of them were converted, and a lot. The reason for that, part of it was, there is a supreme being in that culture called Chukwum. Chukwum. That concept of a supreme being allowed for an easy transference of submission to the Christian faith because there was this supreme being. So when people were evangelizing, there was some understanding of this. So God laid the groundwork. And Christianity's power, some Igbo were able to embrace, because power is a big concept in the Igbo culture. So strong prayer people, if you go to church in the morning, in Korean, when we talk about prayer style, not just in the morning, anytime, but Tonsonggido, and people praying together very strongly, very deeply, people, many voices speaking. There is power in that. And when we look at Nigerian culture and this concept of Chukwum, some of the Igbo were impressed with the power of Christianity, because in the other religion there was this sense of power. I say religion, kind of cultural orientation toward a supreme being, Chukwum. In missions, missions is always changing. When we go back a little further, like in the 1990s, there was kind of a renaissance in missions. Right now, we're seeing missions take all kinds of forms. You can have a missionary work evangelism online, or by text, or by blog, or by being a cultural lecturer. The opportunities for evangelism are very strong right now. It takes people who can embrace it and understand culture and relationships. So we can look back at the old days of missions work, and some of it was not done well. Some of it was done, very well. We have to give people credit for trying to spread the word of Jesus Christ. But some of the missionaries, I think, failed and some denominations can once again look at missions almost as a business. Like, we're planning an ad campaign. And yes, that's part of it. But if it is not based on Jesus Christ and building relationships, and if it's just a campaign to sell Christianity, that's very dangerous, because people are smart. People don't want to buy something like they're buying bread, or buying, going to Cafe Bene or something and seeing the advertisement, someone drinking coffee. Christianity is much deeper, and it's a strong strong thing. It's a serious thing. So we need to realize that sincerity in faith and being guided by the Holy Spirit, very important. If you come to America or you're here already, I think we need to look at an issue of mindset about evangelism and ministry. Some people look upon America as, oh wow, well they send missionaries to places. But as we know, we are also receiving missionaries. So that is something you may encounter if you come here to evangelize, that people will go, wait, you're a missionary coming here? Yes, I'm from Korea. I'm from Argentina. I'm from Bolivia. I'm coming to the U.S. to evangelize. So you may meet people that don't really understand that, because some Americans, especially in some American churches, some people, they're so used to sending, they're not used to receiving. So I just warn you about that, because I'm always a little surprised that some of these American Christians, they don't understand that missionaries are coming here. So I tell you that to be ready, you know. And Dr. Rebecca Kim of UC Berkeley, she looked at this phenomenon too of especially Koreans coming to the U.S. to evangelize, and she reported that many people were surprised, and I've seen this myself, this kind of surprise. I've talked in other classes about Dr. Sharon Kim, Cal State Fullerton, and she looks at churches, Korean American churches in Southern California. And she has this whole notion of hybrid churches, where the church is in a constant state of change. So some churches have might be English speaking exclusively, some may be Korean speaking exclusively. Some churches may serve lunch, and some churches may not serve lunch. So there's this constant going in and out, and people are always changing, and people are always looking for security sometimes, but sometimes they're also looking for a new cultural experience and wanting to get to know new people. So one of the purposes of this class is to raise your cultural awareness, and part of that cultural awareness raising is being open and trying to expose yourself to new places and new situations. It's a little scary, but it's needed. You know, there is also, I think, a desire that's growing that we respect differences and we embrace differences and we enjoy learning, because that's what God has taught us, that we need to look and learn from people's experiences. But I think there is also a push to really come together as Christian brothers and sisters. What does that mean? Well, we struggle with that because, oh well, I don't speak this language. I've never visited that country. So you feel ill-equipped. You don't know what to do. But God is the ultimate communicator. So praying to God for the ability to communicate will help you in this area. I was attending a ministry anniversary event, and this ministry was involved, connected to a church denomination that supported this missions ministry group. And I was speaking about missionaries coming here from other countries, and I said, well, what do you know about missionaries coming here? And he talked about missionaries from Brazil coming here, soccer missionaries. So come here, talk about soccer, play soccer, but bring the good news of Jesus Christ. So I think we need to be careful too about how we look at all of this. I was studying the organization that was sponsoring this ministry group and this Brazilian group that came over. And this was an American-based group. And I looked at their statistics, and I was not happy when I saw how they looked at things. It was a little strange to me. As an American, I didn't like the way they looked at things. So I looked at the missions statistics, and they categorized everything as non-Anglo and Anglo. And I felt it was very insulting the way that was approached for two reasons. Yes, we want to have difference, but we also want to have community. So we can't always, in the church or as missionaries, look at other people as other people. And this concept is called othering. And if there is too much othering, that's very dangerous, because then you're separating yourself. You may learn a little bit here and there, but you're pushing yourself away. You're saying, I'm different. Yes, we may be different, but too much emphasis on difference can sometimes take away from coming together as Christians. So I think we need a sense of balance. I meet Christians from all over the world, and I have met Christians from all over the world, and immediately, even if we don't speak the language, I feel he's my brother, she is my sister. I don't always say, wow, he's from here and there's this difference. Yes, I respect difference, but the number one relationship is we are Christians. We are true Christian brothers, true Christian sisters. We are in a family. We are in a family that has been going on for generations. We connect to the biblical lineages. So we are all in the same family. We are in the same family through Jesus's lineage and his connection to the Old Testament. And we are also family when we meet face to face, and we are brothers and sisters. So getting back to the missionaries, in 2010, Korea had 22,014 missionaries in 169 countries. And 77% of these Korean missionaries focused on non-Korean local people. That's a huge witness. That's a huge testimony. That is showing love of Jesus Christ. That is spreading love. There is power in that love. There is power in that love. That's saying, I don't know you, but I care about you and I want to get to know you. That's very impressive. Very impressive. So I was speaking at Calvin College in Michigan, and I was speaking about my relative Lilias Horton Underwood, missionary to Korea. She wasn't perfect, but many good things she did. She really wanted to evangelize in Korea, and many good things. Some things could be better, but no one is perfect. But when I was there, I was speaking to a missions guy from Argentina, and he was talking about all of the Korean-speaking seminaries and all of the Korean churches in Argentina. And I was just so happy to hear that, because it just, when you think about the growth in missions and the beginnings, in Korea in the 1800s and before, everything is growing and getting better. And so we need to try not to be what I call culturally insular. Insular comes from the Latin word insula, which means island. Any of us who have visited islands or know people who live on an island, sometimes they have their own culture. Jeju, part of Korea, but Jeju has their own culture. There's a kind of an island feel to it. So we have to try not to be culturally insular. We have to try to open our eyes and really get to know people. I encourage you to come to the U.S. if you can. If you are here now, it's a missions field. We need missionaries badly. And background is important, but we need to know that Christianity supersedes, transcends background. So that's all for today, and we're going to be talking more about this in the next class. And I hope this has been helpful, and thank you so much, and God bless.